Coffee is a big part of my day. Not only does it help me get through the morning, but I just really love good coffee. Trade is a subscription service that brings great coffee from indie roasters all over the country right to your door. Tell Trade what you like typically. Single origins, blends, dark or light roasts, or even how you make your coffee, and they'll recommend the right beans for you. Or you can choose from over 450 different coffees and build your own queue. Then you select how often you'd like your coffee delivered, whether that be 7 days, 10 days, 14 days. Shipping's always free. If you find that you have too many beans and you need to skip a delivery, you can do that. Running out sooner than you think and need an order sooner, you can do that as well. No charge. I've done it myself a couple times. It's great to know that I have that flexibility. Go to unitedwedrink.com/trade and get started with Trade and enjoy 30% off your first month. That's unitedwedrink.com/trade. The opinions and statements in this podcast do not represent those of the host's employers, co-workers, family, or imaginary friends. Now enjoy the show.
Happy hour? More like amateur hour. Welcome to United We Drink.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to a brand new episode of the United We Drink podcast right here on unitedwedrink.com, as well as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever fine podcasts are found. My name is Mike Urevich, and, I'm here. That's about all that we can hope for, and you know what? That's about as much as I'm willing to give at this point in time. With me, as always, is my friends, my compatriots, maybe someday fellow expatriates or expats. Who knows? Tim Johnson, Kevin Abbott. How are you guys?
Where are we going to flee to? Do you have any ideas?
Yes.
I like the idea of Ireland. I don't know about you guys, but I visited
I'm down.
there.
I don't have to learn a new language, but well, I guess I kind of do. I mean, who understands what they're saying?
You can pick it up pretty quickly.
I'm optimistic that Canada is actually just going to annex Minnesota, and so I'll just be covered there.
Yeah, I should really think about some of those collar states.
I mean, we voted pretty blue in the last election, so I don't think the administration would be all too sad to lose Minnesota. So, and I think Canada would be all very happy to.
And to think that you guys are also pretty ahead of the curve when it comes to, protecting your people, protecting your natural lands, and workers, and good things.
Well,
yeah,
I mean,
yeah, absolutely.
This administration keeps firing, thousands of government employees. Who's to say they won't fire a state? Minnesota, you're fired. Get out of here.
Right.
Scram.
I mean, they're not a fan of my governor, so maybe we will get doged out of existence, which I'm not too worried about.
Kevin, what are you drinking tonight?
I am drinking from Yards, their pale ale. My friend of the brewery and a friend of mine, Mark Hummel, brought me a bunch of beers from PA, and some of which I was able to do for Old Favorite Friday. This is one of the ones that he just brought me one bottle, and I had it when I was at the brewery years ago. I think we talked about this maybe on the last show or the show before. We talked about Brawler.
Yeah,
I don't remember. Maybe it was just a personal conversation. I don't know.
No, I think it was a couple episodes ago.
Okay, but anyway, so I have this beer here. I'm really enjoying it. I had it once a long time before at the brewery. It's really nice. And then I've got a whole bag full of beers. But one I want to call out, a friend of the show, friend of mine, Craig from the BAOS podcast. He was down here for a month, just kind of hanging out, and he brought me this beer called Nectar and Knife by Triple Crossing out of Richmond, Virginia. And it was a beer that he brought for me. And he also brought me a sour that I will drink at some point. but thank you, Greg. I don't know if he actually listens to the show when he's not
Is that
on
an
it, but I appreciate
IPA?
it. It's a double IPA.
Okay. They're known for good lager brewing
Oh, really?
over there. So I was wondering if it was but that type of name and a green label kind of screams IPA.
Yeah.
Tim, what are you having?
I am drinking water. I developed a pretty wicked sore throat and a cough today, and I think I'm getting sick, and so I decided that maybe my best option to just be to hydrate.
Probably not a bad choice.
Being responsible.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Which is pretty
Kudos.
rare for me. So yeah.
One of my
For
boys
one
just
step at
got
a
their
time.
first case of strep earlier this week. And somehow none of the rest of us got it. We've all had our own little bouts of colds over the last week, but he's the only one who was like bad enough that went to a doctor and got diagnosed with something.
Did you give him the traditional first case of strep throat present?
Yes. I believe it is the paper anniversary. So I just gave him a piece of paper and some crayons.
I was hoping you'd come up with something because I had nothing other than the setup. So nice job.
The only thing I remember about I was gonna say the only thing I remember about chickenpox as a kid is that my mom's friend brought over a bunch of toys and coloring books when I had chickenpox. So I think the paper and crayons is a good thing to do when you get sick.
I just remember the oatmeal baths. Like that was the most, so much so that like many years later into my 20s when I found out that I was allergic to aspirin and broke out in hives and got one of those packets of things to take an oatmeal bath. I'm like, holy fuck, like this reminds me of when I had chicken pox, like the smell and the consistency of that stuff in the bath.
I'm pretty convinced that actually does nothing, and it's just Big Oat trying to,
It is Big Oats.
sell. It's the Quaker people. It's the Quakers. Let's be
Yes.
honest. Trying to push their product on us, saying, "Listen, this is inedible. You don't. Who's going to eat oatmeal in 2025? Fine, put it on your skin when you have a very bad skin condition, and we'll keep these factories running."
It's about
Unless
the
you smell
only
like
thing.
Quakers. Sorry.
No, you say plus you smell like cinnamon and raisins after that bath, so that's always a benefit.
It's about the only thing that the Quakers are evil about. I mean, they're known as a pretty progressive religion, accepting of people of all different walks of life. But when it comes to their oats, they are cutthroat.
But they need money to fund that church, and how else are they going to do it? By the way, you can also smell like maple, and as well. I think maple and brown sugar was another flavor that you could.
Oh, I
also
mean, you can smell like maple by just being an employee of Funky Buddha, but I digress.
I still do, and I haven't been there for 15 years.
I'm continuing at least on Kevin's hoppy train. I have a fresh HRC 003 from Civil Society. It's a takeoff of their flagship Fresh IPA, which is a Columbus and Citra IPA. This has a dry hopping of an experimental variety of hop called HRC 003, and it's pretty nice. It has a little grassiness to it, but a lot of grapefruit. And I was over there last week with one of my friends having a couple beers and picked up a 4-pack. And then for later, I have just something that it was in code at my local grocer, a hazy bear hug from Goose Island. Still very much in code. There was a lot of stuff not in code there, and from locals too. So I was like, I wanted to try a variety pack from Cigar City, their High Lie variety pack that has like High Lie Light, and Double High Lie, and it was like brewed in September of last year. So I was like,
Passed on that.
Do that.
I tried Double High Life for the first time over the weekend, the last weekend, as we were recording this, we went up to Lakeland for a spring training game, and
Oh,
just
nice.
swung by Publix to pick up some beer, which is appropriate for being in Lakeland because
Yeah.
Publix owns Lakeland. So I swung by Publix to pick up some beer, and I picked up some Two Hearted because going to see the Tigers, I can get a Michigan beer, and I saw that giant 19-ounce can, and I said, I've been meaning to try this. I saw the mix pack as you're talking about, Mike, and wasn't moved to pick up that much beer, even though I love High Life, and tried the double High Life. I really enjoyed it.
It's not bad. I like for a double IPA, I like Florida Man better from their offerings, but it definitely tastes like a bigger, like just a slightly bigger version of High Life. Like the flavor profiles are pretty on there, but it has like 10% ABV, so it's a little scary because it doesn't taste that big. But yeah, it's a pretty solid beer.
This double IPA that is only 8% that I'm about to open. Just throwing that out there.
Well, you're 2% less likely to become inebriated. I think that's how the math works on that, right?
Steiner.
Yeah, I wouldn't check it, but let's go. Hazy bear hug. Is there like a non-hazy bear hug? I don't get what bear hug has to do with hazy.
Bear Hug is like one of their. It's a brand extension where they have many different versions of it. There's Neon Bear Hug. There's Juicy Bear Hug. Hazy Bear Hug. It's all like Voodoo Ranger. Think of it that way.
I can't remember the last time I saw them in a liquor store around here, so I just feel like so out of touch with that brand in general.
Me too. I've never had that beer. I've seen it before, and unfortunately, I see Goose Island, and I was a big Goose Island fan back in the day, and I see Goose Island IPA as like the only craft option at a bar, and I go, I'll take a Michelob Ultra, please. If I'm going to drink a beer that I don't love, I might as well have one that's low calorie and I don't feel so bad about.
Yeah, I mean, I try to still try some of the newer stuff that I see if it pops up and it's a decent price, because Publix, we're going to be talking a lot about Publix today. A chain of grocery stores that Tim has probably never stepped foot in his life, but the big
probably not,
chain
no.
here. And a friend of the show, Peter Anderson, is still a brewer over there in the Chicago brewery. So I try to show a little bit of love, and he's thrown me some recommendations of ones that he's really liked. I mean, any variety of Bourbon County Stout that I've had over the last 3-4 years have been fantastic still. And
I do still like Bourbon County. I'll put that out there. I think the quality is still very good on that.
I think it was 2 years ago. Shout out to Dixie Bar and Grill, my favorite local brew pub. They had Bourbon County and 3 varieties on tap for Black Friday, and they were doing a specialty flight, and we happened to go in on the Sunday after for lunch because all of them were still available. Was able to get it, and they were all just great stuff. But yeah, some of the IPAs, I actually had one of these with dinner earlier, and it's a pretty good beer. I enjoy it. And for on the cheaper side of some of the craft, in these times, I'll give it a try. But so we are
the apropos of nothing. Oh no, I was gonna say, how has no one named a hazy beer? I think Bigfoot is blurry. Like someone has to name a hazy Bigfoot is blurry.
Why do I feel like that's been mentioned on the show before? But or I am just like, I'm constantly living a Mitch Hedberg dream, like life.
I would be happy to do that, by the way. So, and I have a famously hard time naming beers, so I can do that.
Well, there you go. Bigfoot is blurry. There's a large, out of focus monster roaming the countryside.
There is none on Untappd. So, Kevin, make yourself a note to go make that beer in Untappd tomorrow, just so you have the placeholder. And you're welcome. You're welcome to Tim.
I'll make a whole series. A Bush Search Party of 3. That can be one of the beers.
IPA temporarily double IPA. Can we just do this for an hour?
What happened to your friends? Worry about eating at a time like this. People are missing.
This will be a long concept for a beer, but I can't tell you the name of this beer. But there are 2 trees involved.
Oh, there's so many great ones we could do.
I'm a fan of an IPA, and I'm not even a member. Oh, that one doesn't really work very well. All right, so what we wanted to talk about tonight is the topic itself is hard to kind of define in a very concise manner, but I'll let Kevin explain it because I don't want to try to make it concise. So it was your idea.
That's a ringing endorsement. So yes. Thank you, Mike. The topic I came up with is hard to describe. I don't think it's that hard to describe. So as brewers and as people that are involved in the brewing process, especially in running breweries, the entire model for the vast majority of breweries is growth. There's not a lot of breweries that are like, oh, we're exactly where we want to be and we don't want to produce any more beer. There are some, and I applaud them for being in a spot where they can be financially stable and they could make the amount of beer that they are making and be profitable. But we are mostly in a growth model. Well, one of the things that there's an expectation of is that like infinite growth is one possible, but two, that's what you need to do in order to be successful. But growth is scary because growth requires more investment. And one of the things that we've learned about craft beer, and I've learned in 15 years in the business, is that there's no guarantees. Anytime you get that new big account, the first thing you think is, oh no, what happens when we lose this account? It's like you celebrate for 50 seconds and then you go through the terror of what's going to happen when your beer inevitably gets kicked out, because it will. There are very few accounts, whether it's retail accounts, bars, what have you, that, you get into a stadium and you think, oh my God, this is going to do this crazy amount of volume. But then you have to produce that volume, count on that money, and what happens when that goes away. And there's been several situations I've dealt with over my career that really highlight the pitfalls and the problems that happen when you're dealing with this. And I'll go into a couple of these going forward. But it is just, it's talking about the fact that it's so exciting and then you're terrified. That's the razor's edge we walk all the time. And I think you kind of have to. If not, you're living a delusional life and you're not going to be successful because you're not going to realize that the house of cards can come crumbling down.
Yeah.
It wasn't concise, but I explained it, I think, pretty well.
There was also a number of things you said in there that sounded like wrestling references, and I wanted to jump in so badly and just interrupt you, but I bit my tongue a little too hard. It's bleeding a little bit, but I didn't. So this is such a hit home thing for me right now because we are in the midst of one of these at Copper Point. We haven't officially announced it yet, but it's essentially a done deal at this point that we are going to be in a major set for Publix, our big chain down here in Florida, come the spring resets that are starting now and should be done by May. The fact that it takes that long is crazy, but we are going to be in practically every Publix from Sebastian, Florida, all the way through Broward County. Wow. And with the exception of probably 10 to 15 stores. Which are like just much, much smaller stores that don't have the cooler space for one of our brands. And then we're going to be in probably about half of those with another one of our brands. And that's a huge deal. big numbers, especially we were in probably about, I want to say 40 stores over the last quarter, or maybe even half a year of 2024, and did good numbers in our home county and even in the county right above us, Martin County. It helped with the the fact that we were able to have positive growth in our distribution sales last year, something not many breweries can say that they did. So getting even more placements in Publix is a huge deal. And when I was told that we were getting this, I was like, sweet. And then my very next thing I said was, now we got to keep them. Like I don't even think that I gave as long of a celebratory thing as Kevin said before I had to be realistic. I'm like, you see all the time brands come in on these resets. There's 2 resets a year. And then by the time the next one comes around, you see a lot of them gone. So we don't want to be one of those brands that falls victim to being cut out when the fall resets come along. So that's going to be a lot of work to, firstly, what you said, keep up with that. Luckily, we have a lot of cans of bees already pre-printed and in-house, but we got to make it. We got to ensure that we have the staff to be able to fill those cans and then keep up with it. Because I'm sure that if we can't keep up with it, that looks bad to Publix and they go, bye-bye.
Your situation is the opposite of my situation. I'm on the other side of that, in that, very similar to you, Mike. For those of you who are listening to this for the first time and don't know that Mike and I live in South Florida, we both work at breweries that are very close to one another. I was also in about 50 or 60 stores in the prior reset. I lost about 60% of my placements in the new resets. We went in the opposite direction. And you might want to say, oh, well, your beer wasn't selling well. Here's the rub on that. And this is just the situation that happened for us. We switched over from bottles to cans about 9 months into the reset, right? And we were picking up steam. So, I mean, we had about 50 placements, POGs, planograms for 2 different brands. And we went from selling about 50 cases a month, right? Which is respectable. Not great, but respectable. Because some accounts were going through a case a month, some accounts were going through a couple cases a week. Some accounts we were having a hard time even keeping the beer on the shelf because honestly the rep from our distributor was not being on top of getting the beer in the cooler, and their automatic ordering wasn't picking up. It's a whole different thing we can talk about in the future. But when we switched over to cans, we started selling about 80 or 90 cases a month. We were so encouraged. Okay, the cans are selling better. We're going to do better. We're going to pick up. What happened was they looked at the numbers for the year. They took the average of a brand new SKU and said, well, these beers didn't sell well because they only sold 6 cases in a year because they didn't cross over the numbers from our bottle SKUs to our cans. We know this because we have a contact at Publix that when we contacted them and said, hey, we got kicked out of all these stores and we had good velocity. And we know for a fact, even with our bottles, we had better velocity than other brands that stuck. They looked at the numbers and he admitted, yeah, our AR ordering in our algorithm did not pick this up. It looked at your brand and said you were not selling well because we sold so few cases over a 12-month period. So we got screwed, even though our velocity was picking up and we were selling a good amount of beer, and got kicked out of about 60% of our placements. So now I got to turn around and find a replacement for those cases. Now, thankfully, I do have in a couple places like Trader Joe's that I've picked up that are going through a ton of beer. That's lucky. But if I was in your position, Mike, and I had 250 locations or so, and I lost that would be unrecoverable. There's nobody that can do that kind of volume. Publix, the grocer here in Florida, is the biggest retailer of craft beer in the state
Yeah.
because they have so many locations. And if you lose that and you're counting on that revenue and your projections are based on that revenue and your staffing is based on that revenue, and you go from 250 locations to 20, that's a huge reduction in your market. And it's also a huge reduction in your visibility. There's so many bad things that kind of domino from there. So I'm not dealing with the worst case scenario with that right now, but it's been a big topic of conversation since the new sets came out. And Mike, I'm really happy for you guys over at Copper Point. You guys deserve it. You make great beer, but it's really I'm bummed that we are in that situation. In some ways, not due to our own fault, but it's just the way that that it turned out.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes when I saw it happen here in Minnesota, it was usually more driven by distributors, not necessarily the retailers. Uh, Distributors had pet brands that they wanted to push, and so it didn't necessarily even matter what those sales numbers were necessarily if they were retailers were buying what distributors were offering deals on or whatever else they were doing, and so you lost tap lines, you lost liquor store accounts just because of that, which is definitely way outside of your ability to control it. And so now you sit here and you talk with your distributor, and they were so certain they were going to do this, and so you go buy those printed cans, and now you're just sitting on months worth, years worth of inventory of printed cans, and that's a whole. It's not just about like losing the sales. It's now all the added other things like sitting on excess inventory that you don't know what to do with, or in some cases, places that ramp up equipment or those types of things to go ahead and meet that. Now that's investments you're not seeing a return on.
Yeah, we kind of, I guess, skipped over that part of like, in order to meet those increases in sales, you have to scale certain areas of your production, whether that be more fermenters, more staff, more raw ingredients, more consumables like your cans, and all of that. Like that stuff costs a lot of money up front, and especially like something like a fermenter that is bigger dollar amounts. If you're getting a new FV in to keep up with the production for a big account like that, and then see that disappear, oh man, that FV might not be used as much as it used to, and it was a huge amount of money up front, and the ROI on that might be thinning out.
Well, another important part about this is the bigger that you get, the less you can rely on yourself and your small team. Now, in a perfect scenario, you get all these stores, these 250 locations. I think Copper Point's a good example of this. I highly doubt that when these stores turn on and everything's hooked up and everything's the beer pipeline is flowing, I highly doubt you're going to hire 2 new sales reps or 2 merchandisers to strictly go to all these Publix and make sure these beers are merchandised properly. I don't think you're going to do that, right? I didn't have anyone to go down to Miami and make sure that our beer was properly displayed in the cooler, had a price tag. We had to count on our distributor. Now, you will be in a better position, Mike, because being in all the stores positions you for the distributor in a really good place because every store they walk into, boom, I know B Squeeze has to be there, right? When you're in my position where you're in 50 stores, a sales rep goes in or a merchandiser goes in and goes, I got 20 stores I service. In Barrel of Monks, Single and Havana is only in 3. When you're only in 3 or 4, you're in a small percentage of those stores, you'd be surprised at how often beer sits in the back shelf. And because the beer is not getting pulled through, it's not getting reordered. I've found 50% of the stores I was in, if we did not go in on a regular basis, that beer sat in the back, or the beer never had even had a price tag on the shelf. It really, really hurt our sales. once we got the beer in and we were kind of babysitting it and the sales rep knew about it and knew that we were watching, velocity went way up. But many of the stores that we lost over time, I mentioned the whole the bottle to can transition, but there were other stores that just never had beer on the shelves. Cases were just lost in the back stock. And we do not have and don't and won't have the staff and the time to drive an hour and a half away from the brewery to merchandise a Publix every Wednesday and Friday. It's just never going to happen. The bigger you get, the more you rely on the distributor and their infrastructure, and it can fail. It can fail miserably. And we've had that happen to us multiple times.
I wonder how many consumers don't realize that when they go into a store, like almost any grocery store, that the beer areas, the wine areas, even a lot of the snack food areas, all of that stuff is put out by a distributor or a supplier. Like, the grocery stores do not stock their own shelves. You hear about stock boys like forever as being like a job, and it just seems like grocery stores have less and less of their own stocking being done. Like, I still see guys in Publix stocking shelves of like Publix brand items, but like any like Frito-Lay's has their own people. Pepsi has their own people. Coke has their own people. They're in those stores, stocking those shelves, helping put in the orders for the stores to make sure that they get their buybacks. But it should not buybacks, reorders. What am I fucking doing? But it's those stores operate. Oh, that's right.
We're recording this, right?
What? Who? Wait, is that what that bear guy is doing?
That's what the bear does.
Oh, it all makes no sense to me yet.
And apparently he gives you hugs too.
But yeah, so much of those stores that you walk in to, like, are stocked by people who don't work for those stores.
To highlight this, Mike, I can tell you that I go to my local Total Wine & More in Boca because it's my number one individual retail account. Total Wine is not my biggest retail account overall. That was Publix. It probably will be Total Wine again very soon. But it's my best individual store. We go through sometimes 5 cases of each one of our major brands a week there. And I go there often to stock shelves, to go up into the back stock, make sure beer's stocked in the cooler. And every time I go, maybe not, that might not be fair. Every other time I go, people start asking me stuff about the store. Where can I find a good Cabernet? Well, I used to be a wine steward. I could actually point you out to that, but I'm in the middle of something. I don't work here. The look on their face it's a mixture of confusion and anger. They're basically like, fuck you. You're stocking shelves in this place. There's no other thing you can possibly do but work here. So no, the vast majority of people have no idea that Frito-Lay and Gold Coast Distributing and Yoplait go in there and stock their own shelves. They have no idea.
Tim will get a kick out of this because he used to work for them. My brother back in the day used to work for not this company, but the one coming up. My brother used to work for Petco for a long time. And when he first started working there, their work shirts were a blue polo shirt. And he would sometimes, before or after his shift, go into Best Buy and just, look around, see about buying stuff, and people would come up to him and ask him questions. And he's like, sorry, I don't work here. Well, you have a blue shirt on. It says Petco on it. I'm like, well, can you still help me? Eventually, Petco moved to like a tan colored shirt, and I would like to think that it is all because of employees that got confused for Best Buy employees.
Okay, this
I
isn't.
used to have a red polo that I wore all the time, and I learned I could never go to Target in that thing.
I'm glad you mentioned Target. This has nothing to do with beer, but this is one of the times where I just almost lost my shit because I have been in many places retailing and stocking shelves for beer and been mistaken for an employee of that store, which is completely understandable. If you're up on a ladder taking a case down, I get it. I still get frustrated, but I get it. I was in Target wearing like a blue t-shirt and someone walked up to me and asked me a very specific question about something. And I looked at them because I've had to deal with this in other parts of my life, and now I'm just shopping. And I said, "Do you think I fucking work here? What about the way I'm dressed? What about me makes you think I fucking work here?" I was it was oh god. I was
Yeah,
way meaner than I had to be, but it was a very frustrating moment for me. Do I have a
no,
look? I don't know.
no, I was too. I was in a JC
And that's
Penney.
when you were instead of grabbing a barrel of Monk's case on the top shelf, you then grabbed a Lagunitas case and you're like, I work for Lagunitas. Don't complain.
Yeah, I was in a JC Penney once in t-shirt and jeans, and somebody came up and started asking me questions, and I was like, "You think JC Penney lets their employees just hang out in a t-shirt and jeans and just sift through clothes looking for things? Like, is it so weird that you might be in a store with other shoppers, or do you think you're the only shopper here?"
It screams of entitlement to me. It's like everyone's here for my own like needs, and anyone can help me because I need it. Um, yeah, it's that's a very frustrating thing. But the it's a good point, Mike. Is that people don't realize how pivotal these distributors are to our business, and these distributors sometimes don't realize how pivotal they are to our business, and sometimes they just don't give a shit.
Yeah.
That last one, I feel like happens a lot of the time.
I remember a distributor who kept on telling us, "No, we're doing everything we can to sell your beer, sell your beer." And I looked at all their sell sheets and all their website, and it just showed all of our brands and bottles, and we hadn't bottled for 2 years. And it was like, you're not doing anything to promote our current brands and our current packaging and our current anything.
Oh,
You know,
well,
like I
Mike, please go ahead.
update. Sorry, I update our brand information inside of what's the name of the fucking company? I'm pulling it up right now because I don't. Encompass. That's the name of the company. Like all of our brands are inside of a database that like any distributor who has our product can see our brand and all of the information I put there. So it has like style, ABV. I have a sell sheet attached to it so that they don't have to have individual sell sheets. If they just pull up the beer, the brand in their computers, which they use Encompass to order with, like so many distributors use Encompass now, and they can just see all of that information. I don't think a single distributor rep probably has ever pulled up a sales sheet for it, but I'm trying to do my due diligence and be like, it's there.
I'll say this one thing about the distributors again, and then we'll move back on to the topic of conversation because now it's just beat up the distributor time. But
We're due for it. We haven't done that in a while.
Nothing frustrates me more than when I hear someone on the distributor side go, "Can we get a sales sheet for this beer?" I'm like, "You're not going to use the goddamn sales sheet. I've been making sales sheets for 10 years at Barrel of Monks, and I know for a fact you people don't use them because for a similar reason, you don't even know what kind of package we have." And they'll ask for it, and I don't. It's like, "Can I get a business card?" No one's asked for your business card since 2007. So no, you don't need a business card. I'll give you my contact information. You don't need my sales sheet. There's plenty of information out there on the internet. But I digress. I want to go back into kind of what we were talking about, and we talked about Publix. We talked about retail locations package. I am currently going through something similar to what Mike's going through with Publix, with a on-premise account, with a draft account. This is a massive account, and I'm probably still not at liberty to say what account it is right now, but needless to say, if we bring this account on, they'll be buying half-barrel kegs, and they may be buying between 100 and 150 kegs a month. Now, if you are not in the industry, it's really, really good if an account goes through 1 half barrel a month, right? If you go through 2 or 3 half barrels a month, you are a rock star. We're there every single day, just thanking you endlessly for the amount of beer you're doing. So 100 half barrels a month, you can imagine how big this account must be for us. When this happens, and this is happening, it's going to happen. The question is, how long is it going to happen? And I have to make a decision. And I'm in the middle right now. I could purchase somewhere in the neighborhood of 300 half barrels, empty, used half barrels, to support this account, because I have to have I have to have kegs that are ready to fill. I have to have kegs that are sitting at the distributor waiting to be bought. And I have to have empty kegs that are sitting at the account waiting to come back to me. I could either purchase around 300 half barrel kegs, or I can go with a paper fill model and give up a lot of my profits, a good portion at least, to this paper fill company, but not have to invest the capital to support this account. Especially an account that I don't know if they're going to go through 100 half barrels a month, or 50, or 75, or 150. That's a really, really tough position to be in. We're very excited. This is potentially game changing to us. If you do the math on this, this can bring in tens of thousands of dollars in pure profit into our brewery every year. But it comes with a cost. I have to invest in this and mitigate my downside by going with a paper fill model, or I can invest in cooperage of my own and risk my downside, but have a higher potential upside and a higher potential profit. Now, we're about 99% of the way through making one of those decisions. But at the end of the day, we could get in that account, and 6 months in, they could have a whole new buyer comes in, change us up everything, and we go from that volume with the highest profitability possible. The important thing about package is that, yes, Publix is massive, and I would give my left leg to get into 250 locations. But package profitability is low. 100 to 150 half barrels a month is pure profit. It's the dream of every brewery. If we get this and we lose it, it will be devastating. So it's the classic thing of, oh my God, this is amazing. Oh my God, thank you. Then, oh my, what are we going to do? How are we going to support this? And what's going to happen in a year from now?
Well, because beer is such a, what have you done for me lately industry. We've talked about that, right? That hot brands are not hot within 6 months. Something that really moves the buyer fatigue on certain things seems to set in pretty rapidly. That's why you guys at your breweries are probably constantly having to come out with new things to keep people interested. So even if you do really well, a lot of retailers and a lot of restaurants want to mix things up regularly, or at least semi-regularly. So even if you are selling well, it doesn't necessarily mean you get that. And the other factor is, if you don't fulfill that, I used to have this argument all the time with the owner of one of the breweries I was at, and we were trying to do some demand planning, and he'd be like, "Well, if we can't fulfill that, they can take another one of our brands." And I said, "Oh, no, that's not how that works. They got us because they want our IPA. They're not going to take our red ale as a replacement. They're just going to put on a different IPA, and now we have lost that account entirely." Don't
Yeah.
know that other people fully understand that. They're not loyal to you as a brand. They're buying a specific beer from you. And if you don't supply that once.
There was something about that brand they liked. They liked the name.
Yeah.
They probably like the name. They probably don't care about the taste because almost no one does that. Quality is not important. It's the concept, it's whatever. And this is very true for the brand that we have going into this major account. And no, you cannot undersell. You cannot slow play this. You have to go all in because the second you don't have product, and Mike, this is with Publix, this is with accounts like this. If you don't have product, you're going to be kicked out. So you have to make the maximum investment. You have to shoot for the highest end of projections. And I'll give you another example, not nearly as dramatic as the draft account that I just spoke about. But I had a restaurant come to me and want to do a big name, little name, basically rebrand one of our beers for them. Well, they wanted a brand new beer at first, and we ended up doing the big name, little name thing. But their projections when we got the account were 1/4 of what their actual sales were, 1/4 of what their projections were. If I had planned for that other part of that production, I could have done the beer for them. We specifically understood that their projections were going to be way high. And in some situations, you kind of get it because you have experience with those kind of accounts. But this account I'm talking about, I have no idea. Their projections, those high 150 half barrels, it could be what they need. And if I go, well, in my experience, it's 1/2. Let's shoot for 75. We'll only have enough keg for 75 kegs a month. And they want beer that we don't have, we're going to be out of there immediately. So we have no choice but to shoot for the high projection, knowing it's almost impossible it's going to be at the high projection, and invest the money for the high projection, knowing it's not going to happen. That drives you insane.
Were you at my first brewery when we had a similar thing happen for a restaurant in Delray that wanted to carry a beer that we did a couple times a year? They wanted it year-round on draft. Mexican Standoff, our like Mexican stout thing.
Yeah, that sounds familiar.
And the numbers that they gave us on like, hey, we could go through this a week. Like, I think we figured like, okay, if they go through that, and if we want to keep it on tap here, like we'd have to make like a 30 barrel batch of this like every 3 weeks and or something like that. There might be some hyperbole in there, but it is just, and of course they didn't hit those numbers. We had so much of the beer on hand because they weren't going through it, and we couldn't go through all of that in our tap room. We put it out to some other accounts to be able to, like, initially it was supposed to be all allocated to them and just one restaurant location. That restaurant now has many locations, but I digress. But they couldn't go through it, and they're like, yeah, sorry. I'm like, we're gonna have to stop doing it. And it's we learned the hard way. Like you talked about, you knew that they couldn't hit those numbers, but you had to kind of go off of something, and like you're gonna get burnt on some of those type of deals because people are always going to blow smoke or just, they're not, maybe not even blowing smoke. They might genuinely think that they can go through those numbers, and you don't know for sure if they can. And shut up, dog.
Do not call me a dog, okay? It's not nice.
Sorry. But lost my fucking train of thought there. But yeah, now I remember what you're so, when people are hard selling you on these things, you don't want to ever show a sign of, I don't know if we can do that, because then they'll be like, they can't, we'll move on to someone else, because there is the potential for the sales there. Even if they don't hit those numbers, it's sales. It's something that could build up to that. Because, what are you going to do? Just say no to it? A lot of owners just want to say, or salespeople just want to be like, yes, yes, yes.
Well, what I'm hearing from you, Mike, is something kind of adjacent to this in some ways. It's just kind of the way you have to deal with an account that has unrealistic expectations and maybe doesn't even know what they're going to go through. They're just shooting out a high number because they want you to be able to hit it. In case they go through that, they need to shoot high because they want to cover their own ass, right? But these accounts can be really unrealistic and it's really tough. And Tim, have you ever gone through this where you know of like a bar or maybe a big account that says like, we really want this kind of beer, and you're like, you're not going to sell that beer. They're like,
Oh,
we really want to have our house beer be a saison, and you're like, no, you fucking don't. You don't. It's not going to work out. You want an IPA or you want this. And they're just adamant. And you're just going, well, this is going to be a temporary thing that we're going to have to deal with.
yeah. I mean, I can think of a few. There was an Irish bar in Savage that really wanted to have an Irish red on. Fine, right? I'm not going to make a whole lot because even though you're an Irish bar, you're not going to sell a ton of that. No one's drinking an Irish red anymore, right? Like I'm like, first of all, you're in Savage. You're not exactly like well known for your Irish heritage. I'm betting Miller Lite is still your number one selling beer.
I was going to say, like, I bet Smithwick's still isn't even like a top 5 seller in most Irish pubs.
Yeah, and so it was definitely one of those where, I didn't say no, we're not going to. Like, yeah, we're excited to have this thing on there. It's going to be your house beer, but it is going to be a co-branded type of thing. Great, let's do this. It did okay, but it was nowhere near those projections, and I was so worried about the obsolescence risk. Right, it's kind of like what you go through every year at Oktoberfest is if you make too much of your Märzen or your Oktoberfest sales of that absolutely crater on October 31st, and now you're rebranding this thing as a European lager or something for the next 6 months to try to get through whatever you had. The obsolescence risk is so high. I mean, we had that with so. I don't know if I can convey to you guys how big of a deal the state fair is here, right? We're the largest state fair in the country. And it's a big coup to get beer on there because every year, one of the biggest things are what are going to be the new special beers that are coming out there. And you can only get it at the state fair, yada, yada, yada. And so you have to preload that with like 80 barrels of beer, knowing that you also have to buy back anything that didn't sell. And so, yeah, you get it in there and you move that. Holy shit, that just made your quarter. That made your year to be able to move all of this stuff. But if you get the wrong placement or for whatever reason the style isn't what somebody wanted, because there's always like some s'mores beer or something that always does really well at the state fair, now you're buying all this product back. Like it already left and went to the state fair. You're bringing it back into your door and trying to move it into your tap room, and that obsolescence risk just becomes so huge. And now after maybe you can get away with selling that beer in your tap room for another 4 months, but at some point that beer is going to be something you don't want to even be serving anymore.
Tim, that's such a great example of like volume accounts that are a blessing and a curse at the same time. I mean, this is what we're entirely talking about is the fact that you feel like you got this and this will make you get this exposure and you get this volume and when you get one of those accounts, even if it's a state fair and it's a one-time drop, you tack that onto your sales for the year and you go, we're up 7%. I mean, if you're a brewery, I mean, if you're doing 20,000 barrels a year, it's different. But if you're like us doing 2,000, 2,300, that's a huge bump for the year for you. But then when you have to buy back 75% of the beer you sent out, you've just screwed yourself over on a massive scale. And it gets even more complicated when you're talking about what Mike said with people buying things that they don't really know. They just have a feeling or they have a concept in their mind and you can't dissuade them. You can't say, no, this is not going to work for you. I promise. I know this business. I know this area. This beer is not going to work. And when they say, no, I want it, how do you turn it down? How do you say, you know what? No, I abdicate. I don't want this business. Go give it to somebody else. The vast majority of us go, okay, we'll give you the red ale. We'll give you the Mexican standoff. We'll give you the beer we know isn't going to work. And the downstream effects is not just the beer you take back or the sales you didn't get, but oftentimes, which really sucks, and this happened, I've had this happen before, is that the account blames you. Your beer didn't sell. Barrel of Monks did not do well here. No, you put a beer that doesn't work for your clientele, that was never going to sell, whether it was Barrel of Monks, Dogfish Sheds, or Sierra Nevada, and now you're going to say it was you and you never get another opportunity. That's another thing that happens with accounts like this, and it's maddening.
Yeah. You didn't support us with it. You didn't promote that it was here for your people to come in and have it. Yeah, I've heard those types of things before.
Oh yeah, no, well, again, that Irish bar, I was going over there and I was doing like, hang out with the brewer night and beer dinners and all that stuff, and we were doing everything, but it was like the whole time it's like, and I was proud of the beer, but I just know no one's drinking red ales anymore. So,
So we have a casino down here, and that's a really important account that you can have because there's a lot of people going through there. You could sell a lot of beer, and they wanted an imperial stout. I don't know why. It's never going to sell in that environment, but they were adamant about having an imperial stout. So we just said, screw it. We'll make a ton of, because we make an imperial stout once a year. We'll make a ton of it. We'll make a bunch of extra. And that beer will, especially in kegs, you could drink that beer in 5 years. It will still be delicious. Right? So perfectly fine. But I kept saying, can we move them onto something that will actually sell? Because it won't. And they'll think that we suck. Lo and behold, we sold them about 6 Slims or so over a 9-month period, and they won't return phone calls and buy our beer anymore. I could have predicted this, and I am not Nostradamus because all that stuff's bullshit. Yeah. I just know the business, and I know that was not going to sell, and they were not going to listen to us.
When I was on the beverage team at B-Dubs Corp, there would be some regional managers that really considered themselves to be beer connoisseurs or whatever, and so they would put together like this list of beers they really wanted to have. Maybe they were friends with one of the owners of a brewery, or maybe they just really liked these things. And I didn't understand why they, as regional managers, weren't looking at sales and things like that. And we gave them like draft optimization tools. If you've got 24 taps, at least 6 of these should be local. At least 4 of these should be we gave them all those tools. And some of those regional managers just decided that they knew better and they wanted to do different. And they were constantly cycling through things because things weren't moving and they weren't selling because they were picking things that were more esoteric, right? I mean, I love a Saison. They don't fucking sell. I like having variety when I go on, but I mean, what?
I would be really confused if I saw DuPont on tap at a B-Dubs.
Yeah, well, and I mean, we've seen this at breweries over and over and over the place. Some of the most hyped breweries are making like 3 hazies and 2 pastry stouts and 2 their tap lists of breweries have gotten pretty boring. But it's because that's what's selling. right? As much as I would love to make so many different things, yeah, cool. We go ahead and we make that whatever. I mean, Hefeweizen. Make a Hefeweizen. Great, I did that. I love that. It doesn't really sell. People who love it.
Well,
Beer people are such a fan for some things. ESB, mile wide, inch deep, right? Everyone will tell you that they love them, and they'll be mad when you get rid of them. And then you put it on, and they drink one, and then they switch over to an IPA for the next two or three.
and the important thing about that is in tap rooms, and what you're saying, Tim, by the way, I not only do I agree with, I respect you saying it, is that yes, we are seeing a simplification of draft lists at breweries where they're making 25 hazies and this, that, and the other because that's what's selling. But in certain situations, my brewery, to be specific, I can sell my double in my tap room, right? And that deludes people, sometimes customers, because they get mad if it's not on, or it deludes, regular customers. I mean, we have regular customers that are, they run and operate, beer centric bars, and they're like, I want your double on draft. No, you don't. But it does so well at your place. Yeah, it does well at our place. It will not do well at your place. It just won't. We've tried it. It doesn't work. It deludes some people out in the market. It deludes people in your tap room. It deludes owners into saying, well, it does so well, we should make this a staple beer in the market. No, it will be a waste of a SKU at our distributor because they're not going to give us infinite SKUs. And it's going to really handcuff us, and it's going to be an albatross around our necks. But it's hard to convince. What this entire conversation is telling me, it's hard to convince people who already are convinced of something that they're wrong. And maybe that's a good thing to be thinking about in 2025 in general. But it is something that we have to deal with in this industry and in life.
Were you referencing something? I don't think I was picking up on that there.
No, nothing in particular.
Okay. Exact thing going on. We discontinued our West Coast IPA earlier this year, and the people in the tap room are like, "It sells so well here." Like, it doesn't. Like, you think that it does. Like, it didn't sell well out in the market. It didn't sell well here. It's been down 3 years straight. So, I get that you like something. But and I feel like I said this on an episode before, or it's always boggling around in my mind. Like, if you like us so much, respect that we can't keep on selling something that keeps on losing, or we go out of business and then you don't have us at all. Like, respect that. Like, if you love us so much, support that we want to stay alive.
There is no doubt that everything we're talking about right now is like adjacent to the conversation we started with.
Yeah.
But what we are broaching into would be another great show in general, is like this mentality of our patrons and people in general. I had a guy come in the other day. I'll keep this quick, but I had a guy come in the other day, and he was like knocking on our door during our non-operating hours. And he was mad that we weren't open on a Wednesday afternoon. And he said, "You're not open for lunch?" Like, mad. And I said, "No, like, the hours are on the door. They're on the website." He's like, "Why not? You should be open for lunch." As if I'd never conceptualized it. As if we had not run numbers and realized that we're in the middle of an office plaza. No one's coming here for lunch except for you every 6 months. So maybe it's not profitable for us to open at that time because we're not here to cater to you when you want to show up. We've done the numbers. We understand our business. And it's not like we have sitting around going, man, we want to make more profit, but there's just nothing to do. No, we've thought maybe we should be open for lunch and it would be a cash sink for us. It's the same thing with the beers. It's the same thing with all this stuff. Is that we've actually done this. It's not that we're dumb.
But I mean, every consumer assumes they're a typical consumer, right?
Mhm.
Like
Mhm.
every consumer assumes they're a typical consumer, and sometimes like owners get into that trouble too. Oh, a Doppelbock.
Dock Street,
This-
good
It's just
good
a
old school brewery from the city.
Yeah, it's from PA, so that's why I was showing it to Mike. I didn't know if he.
I also love. I gotta say, I meant to mention this earlier. I love that you say PA because that is a very PA thing. Is like, I highly doubt you say MI or Tim says MN when talking about your home state. But like, that's something about Pennsylvania is like you say that you're from PA.
I like to be like I'm a local, but I think in my showing this on screen, which nobody saw, I think we cut Tim off, and I don't want to
Yeah,
do
sorry,
that because
sorry.
he was in the middle of something.
Oh, I didn't know. I know what was it? Oh, I was just saying how like the thought that you're an average consumer almost becomes more of a pitfall for some owners, right? Like we at one of the breweries I was at, we had a beer that I just did not think was good, but it was our number one seller. And that's what I always got when I wanted to change it or I wanted to push a different beer or whatever. It was like, yeah, but Tim, that's your number one seller. And I was like, everybody who sells products has a number one seller. That doesn't mean it's good. It just means that it's the best of the crap that you have. There could be 3 or 4 different things that we could make that could easily outsell that. So don't like the whole sacred cow thing that comes up, especially because if it's somebody's like, a lot of owners who started the brewery themselves and it's their own homebrew recipe or whatever, and some of those things. It's like, well, yeah, it's gonna sell okay when you sell it, but if we made a hazy IPA, would that outsell it by a billion times? Like, there's this whole mental bias that comes into those things. And so tying it back to what we've been talking about, those restaurant owners that want to have that exclusive beer or an organization or a co-brand or whatever that want to have a certain type of beer, I don't know how many times like I did a, a wild rice beer for as a co-branded thing with a stand-up paddleboard company, and it was good. And they're like, oh man, I love this. I'm like, yeah. Was this really the best choice to do? Like, oh, but it's so like, oh no, there's no way this won't sell. This is really good. That kind of you know bias creeps in, and so it makes it too easy to buy a ton more raw materials than you need to, or go buy the cans in the quantity that you probably shouldn't, or the labels or whatever.
I remember when you texted me if I knew any suppliers of wild rice. Like I was working at Moss Mill in PA. I was in the cellar that day and I was like, this is a weird one. I truly do not know of a supplier for this.
So I know I'm a little bit late to the party, but I have an Uncle Ben that might have been able to help you out, and I'm sorry that I wasn't there for that. I think
I
that
had an Uncle Ben too, and he died, but he passed along some really good information that, like, with great responsibility comes great power, or something like that. No, it's the other way around. But yeah, I miss him.
you got there. But I think like this unrealistic expectation that maybe customers have and accounts have all kind of wrap up into this understanding that our business is so much more complicated than people realize. And the wins are sometimes not wins. Sometimes they're burdens. And we have to look at these things so strategically and make the right choice. I'll tie it back to what I was talking about with my plan to buy used kegs or go with a paper fill model like MicroStar. This is a big deal for us. It's a $10,000 swing in profitability potentially in the next calendar year. And if I go with one model, it might be the best thing I ever did. And if I go with that same model, it could be horrible long term and be something that we're paying for the next 3 to 5 years. And what everybody expects is that You just flip a switch and you make this easy decision and the beer just sells. It's the mentality of, "Hey, I live in New Jersey. Why don't you sell your beer here? I like your beer." Well, because I don't have an infrastructure there, because I don't have a sales rep there, because I don't have a distributor there. Like I didn't just say fuck Jersey. I never had an opportunity to sell beer there, and I didn't know you
I'll say
existed.
it. Fuck Jersey.
Fuck Jersey.
But it's an important thing, and I think these big accounts have high expectations, and they come into this going, "You got to take care of us," and we're at their beck and call. We are subject to their whims, and they want us to prepare and have 150 half barrels ready to go at a moment's notice, but they can cut us tomorrow, right? It's like the MLB not having guaranteed contracts, right? That's what we're dealing with every single day, and it is maddening to deal with. And it's a lot of the reason why people like myself and you guys are stressed out about our lives and our business, and for Tim getting out of the business, which is a healthy thing. It's one of the reasons why that happens.
So
This is a really nice Doppelbock, by the way. I like this.
Dock Street's such a good brewery.
Dock Street. This is very good.
Yeah. They woman owned in Philly, has been around for a long ass time. They make excellent beer. So the brewing industry still very scary.
Still very complicated.
Still very complicated. No doubts about that. Anyone want to add anything else in there before we move on?
I think one thing that I was just going to say is all of this gets compounded by the fact that the industry itself is shrinking. We're seeing a lot of breweries that are downsizing right now. And so when you talk about taking on that growth, that's scary in a good market. In the market that it is right now, that only magnifies it. And I think that's maybe something that we didn't touch on that is just a huge thing too, right? Because the likelihood that you're going to get dropped tomorrow is a lot higher, or the likelihood that we're going to have other issues with suppliers or with anything is going to be on there. It just becomes that much harder.
While there are, in my world, no accounts that are going to replace that volume if I lose it, there are even somehow fewer opportunities now to do that, and even fewer opportunities that a conglomeration of accounts could possibly replace that volume, where 10 years ago there might have been more opportunity. So that's actually a very astute thing to mention, Tim, because in a receding market, it's even tougher to make these calls.
Yeah, that's me, astute. That's what people usually say about me.
I think it's your middle name, Tim Astute Johnson. Is that you?
It
I've
really
heard that
rolls
name.
off the tongue right there.
It does. It does.
What is that? Scandinavian?
There's an umlaut over there.
There's an umlaut over. Yeah.
Some other diacritic over the T.
All right. Let's head into last calls, the point in the show where we give each other an unspecific amount of time to talk about whatever it is that we want, beverage related or not. The only rules of this are that it is uninterrupted, unopposed, and unobjected. I'll kick things off here because we are now solidly into March now, as of the time of this recording, and March is one of the times that I am most jealous of people in other parts of the country, because March is March mildness. It is the time to enjoy English mild beers, one of my favorite styles that no one makes because they don't really sell in a large scale of things. March mildness was created by Machine House Brewing in Seattle a number of years ago, who are a brewer of a lot of English style beers, cask beers specifically. Well, not specifically, but they do a lot of cask beers as a way of kind of celebrating one of the premier styles of cask beer. And this was adopted by Forest and Main Brewing, a Philly area brewery from Ambler, PA, a number of years later, because they too were big believers in English style beers, especially their milds. And it has blossomed into something I don't think that anyone ever foresaw, to where this year for 2025, Forest and Main has a mild passport that they have teamed up with other breweries in the Philadelphia area. You get a little passport at any of the participating breweries. You get a stamp for drinking a pint of mild at any of these breweries. There are 40 participating breweries all pouring milds during the month of March. And then on April 5th, Forest and Main is hosting a party at their brewery where you hand in your passport, and for every stamp you have, you get one raffle ticket. So you get all 40, you get 40 raffle tickets, and every participating brewery have donated things to the prize pot that are going to be given away for that. My dark milds are one of my favorite styles of beer. I absolutely love them. And I am so jealous of being away from the area for something like this. If you are in an area to where you have a brewery that makes a regular mild or a dark mild, please drink one for me. Please enjoy the wonderful, wonderful style of mild and get down with the mildness in March. Gavin?
Before I go into my last call, I do want to mention that Doc Street's Doppelbock is named Illuminator, which goes in the tradition of saying of Doppelbocks having the final syllable of "or," which is a thing. And in case you did not know that, that beer is delicious and you should have it. My last call this week is about a YouTube channel by a person named Ryan George. Ryan George does used to be on Screen Rant, which was one of the YouTube channels that he would contribute to, with a thing called Pitch Meeting. And Ryan George does this idea of pitch meeting. It's like 3 to 5 minute videos about pitch meetings for different kinds of movies. It's a comedy channel that is absolutely brilliant. This person is not a great performer, but an incredible writer, to the point that when you are doing a series of things, you have these tropes that happen over and over again. And when they happen over and over again, these jokes happen over and over again, they can become redundant and not funny anymore. I've probably watched 100 of these pitch meetings, and they're very, very funny. The writing is so good that it is consistently funny, even when you know when the tropes are going to happen. They're brilliant. And on his channel, he also does things like essentially roasting like $1 million homes for sale and making fun of the listings and the pictures that they do. He does this whole series of like the first guy to ever do this. And they're absurd, they're ridiculous. And somehow, after watching many, many of them, they remain funny, and that speaks to the performance and the writing that goes into to the videos. So, if you're looking for something fun to watch on YouTube, look up Ryan George. He's great. All of his content is fantastic, and I find a lot of things I find on YouTube to be awful, and a lot of things to be, you watch 1 or 2 videos and you're completely done with them and you don't have to revisit it. But this is one person who really, really deserves the kudos and the repeat viewing and people getting into his stuff, because he's very good at what he does, and I have a great deal of respect and appreciation for it.
Tim?
My last call is about how stupid the weather here is in the upper Midwest. 2 weeks ago, On Wednesday, I was wearing short sleeves. 1 week ago, I was shoveling 9 inches of snow. It's going to be 70 degrees tomorrow and then like 30 on Sunday. So, Mother Nature, just make up your freaking mind. I cannot, I cannot take this back and forth. You're toying with me. You are a cruel mistress, Mother Nature. Just let it be spring already, because I am quite certain that I'm probably going to get one more 8-inch snowfall again before the end of March, and I don't. My joints can't take it. My back can't take it. And frankly, my mental health cannot take it. So, all that said, I'm still not going to move to a temperate or like to a much milder climate, because I love it here. Just months like March are always annoying. So yeah, so this is the time of year where you see people in bundled up in big winter parkas in the morning and running around in shorts in the afternoon. You get my favorite phenomenon, which is the couple, and one of them is dressed like it's December 28th, and one of them is dressed like it's June 3rd. Which I is always quite comical to me. And then you've got the guys that decide that, you know what, once I go into shorts, I'm just staying into shorts, and I don't care how cold it gets again. But I am too old to put up with this shit. So, Mother Nature, make up your mind.
You want to plug anything?
I don't have anything to plug. Skittles. I got a bag of Skittles, and I hadn't eaten Skittles in a really long time, and it's been like I can't eat too many of them because they're way too sweet, and I can feel my teeth rotting. But just every once in a while, I walk by and I grab a handful. So, Skittles, candy that I've forgotten, that I feel that time is forgotten. So, go taste the rainbow.
Marshawn Lynch is now a co-host on this podcast, apparently. Big fan of the sour Skittles. I like those ones. Kevin, you want to plug anything?
I'm glad, Tim, you mentioned that, because even though my 7-year-old son does not listen to this podcast, sadly, he would really appreciate the Skittles plug because it's his favorite candy. So
I'm
thank
trying
you.
to get us new demographics, guys. Yeah.
Thank you for that. No, I have nothing to plug. Who cares about any of the things that we're doing?
I remember a night, I think it was during the pandemic, where Kevin and his wife zoomed in with my wife and I to watch a wrestling pay-per-view, and it was so bad that we ended up talking about Halloween candy for like 2 hours.
I remember that. That was awesome.
So I plug having silly conversations with your friends, because they're always great. Other than that, you can follow our show on social media. We're at United We Drink on Blue Skies. We're at United We Drink Pod on Instagram and Threads. We're on Facebook as well. We're on all of the major podcast streaming services, whichever one you prefer. Please subscribe to our show. If you're on iTunes or Apple Podcasts, as they call it now, rate and review the show. Helps us out there. If you want to support the show financially, head to our show or head to our website, unitedwedrink.com, and check out the Brands We Love page. If you click on any of those links and buy something, it helps us out financially, and it goes towards hosting fees. We also have our web store, unitedwedrink.com/store, with shirts, buttons, stickers, totes, and all that other fun stuff. We'll be back in a couple weeks with another new episode. Thank you, everyone, once again. We'll see you then. Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers.